Welcome to Starbound. My name's Chikondi, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Farron and Rimiki. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now let's get into today's story. General Zilthrax's 6 tentacles spasmed simultaneously as the reconnaissance data materialized on the War Council's central holo display. His chromatophores flashed scarlet with alarm, a reaction the 12 other species representatives couldn't mimic, but instantly recognized. "Malfunction!" he croaked through his translator. "This probe has clearly malfunctioned!" Admiral Vexala, her crystalline exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber lights, leaned forward.
The Hermes-class recon drones have a 99.997% reliability rating, 3 redundant sensor arrays, self-diagnostic capabilities. This is not a malfunction.
The room fell silent as footage from planet XJ2847 filled the display, a hellscape by any civilized definition. Gravity reading 5.8 standard units. Atmosphere primarily chlorine and fluorine compounds. Surface temperature fluctuating between 60 and 140 degrees Celsius. Meteorological note: periodic showers of molten metal alloys. Classification: uninhabitable death world. And yet, there they were. Humans. Not in environmental suits, not in battle mechs, just wearing what appeared to be lightweight armor. Some had arms and chests exposed to the elements. All were engaging in organized combat drills. The footage zoomed in on one group engaged in what could only be described as hand-to-hand combat training. 2 humans locked in a wrestling match, their muscles strained against the crushing gravity. Sweat, actual water leaking from their bodies, evaporated instantly in the toxic air.
"By the eternal void,"
whispered Xiv, the insectoid tactician from the hive worlds.
"Are they laughing?"
Indeed, one human had just been slammed into the ground with enough force to shatter a Phylaxian warrior's spine. Instead of dying, the human rolled, sprang back to her feet, and made a comment that caused her opponent to double over in amusement. In the background, a shower of molten copper began to fall. The humans simply adjusted their formation, continuing their exercise under a makeshift shield array, calling out to each other with what the translation software identified as jokes and casual insults.
"This cannot be their actual battlefield,"
stammered Chancellor Yolon, his fur bristling with fear.
"No species would waste resources fighting over such a worthless death trap."
Professor Ixlal, the counselor's xenobiologist, cleared her throat. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible.
"This isn't a battlefield. According to the metadata, this is a training facility. The humans call it Camp Nightmare. It's where they send their beginners."
The silence that followed was physically painful.
"Beginners?"
Admiral Vexala finally managed.
"You mean to tell me those are recruits, not their elite shock troops?"
The professor nodded slowly.
"The facility appears to be designated as a basic training installation. I believe these humans are what they call fresh meat."
The Galactic War Council, comprising the greatest military minds of 12 spacefaring civilizations, stared in collective horror as the footage continued. A human instructor was now berating a line of recruits for their pathetic performance in completing only 80 consecutive pull-ups while hanging from a cliff face, being bombarded by hurricane-force winds carrying particulate silica. General Zilthrax's tentacles went limp.
"If this is how humans train,"
he whispered.
"What are their actual battlefields like?"
finished Admiral Vexala, her crystalline body turning an ashen gray.
"Order! I demand order!"
roared Grand Marshal Photix, his luminous crest flaring with authority. The emergency session of the Hall of Generals had devolved into panic within minutes of the training footage being displayed. General Lirith of the Aeroflux Sovereignty had collapsed after watching humans performing what they called burpee push-ups under 6 times standard gravity. His species evolved in a 0.3 G environment. The mere thought of functioning in such conditions had triggered a sympathetic nervous shutdown.
This is psychological warfare,
shouted Commander Draz of the Vermilion Legion.
They've clearly planted this footage for us to find. No species could possibly...
The evidence is conclusive, interrupted General Takis, head of Galactic Intelligence. The avian officer's feathers were unusually flat against his body, a sign of extreme stress.
We've now identified 17 distinct human training facilities on planets classified as uninhabitable.
The holo display shifted to show a montage of these facilities. Each one looked like a different circle of hell. A blue gas giant with crushing pressure and ammonia storms. Humans in minimal protective gear practicing precision shooting. A tidally locked world where the day side hit 500 degrees Celsius. Humans running an obstacle course through actual fire. A low-gravity moon covered in razor-sharp crystal formations. Humans practicing zero-G knife fighting, laughing as they bounded between lethal spires.
"Oh!"
demanded Admiral Krov of the Hegemony, his metallic skin reflecting the horrific imagery.
"How are they not dying by the millions?"
Colonel Takis switched to a medical briefing.
Human physiology is unique. They evolved on a world that is itself remarkably hostile. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, toxic substances everywhere, dangerous flora and fauna. But more importantly, they adapt quickly, intentionally.
The display showed human cellular structures rapidly changing in response to stressors.
Their bodies become stronger under pressure. Exercise tears their muscles, which then rebuild tougher than before. Exposure to toxins prompts their livers to develop new filtration mechanisms. Broken bones heal denser than they were originally.
"By the void," whispered Grand Marshal Photix.
"They're designed to get stronger from things that should kill them."
Intelligence Officer Nexa rose from her seat, her gelatinous form rippling with agitation.
"There's more," she said. "I've analyzed their historical records. For thousands of years before developing spaceflight, humans fought each other, constantly. Their entire history is an unbroken chain of warfare. These training methods, they've refined them over centuries of killing their own kind."
The room went silent.
"The Zethrak Dominion trains its soldiers in perfectly calibrated simulations,"
said Grand Marshal Photix quietly.
"The Hegemony uses climate-controlled biodomes. The Hive World's warriors practice in nutrient-rich environments to prevent unnecessary casualties. Humans," Colonel Takis said, "train in environments specifically designed to kill them. And when too many die, they don't make the training easier. They just call the survivors elite forces and give them harder training."
A Vermilion commander spoke up, his voice shaking.
"I've read their literature. They have a saying, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war."
General Zithrak, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly emitted a mournful tone.
"They don't just survive war,"
he said.
"They prepare for conditions worse than war. We have been preparing our forces for combat. They have been preparing their forces for hell itself."
The implications settled over the assembly like a shroud.
"And we," Admiral Vexala said into the silence, "we're considering launching a preemptive strike against a minor human colony."
Nobody met her gaze. Operative Z-Vex had volunteered for the mission, confident that reports of human training were exaggerated. As the Dominion's premier shapeshifter, Z-Vex had infiltrated dozens of hostile environments. This would be no different. That confidence lasted exactly 12 seconds after the stealth shuttle's airlock opened onto the surface of what humans called Camp Ironheart. The gravity hit first, an invisible fist that nearly crushed Z-Vex's carefully constructed human disguise. Years of genetic modification allowed Z-Vex to maintain the form, but at a terrible metabolic cost. Each step felt like wading through neutron star material. Then came the air, if one could call it that. A mixture of nitrogen, sulfur dioxide, and trace elements that immediately began to corrode Z-Vex's external membranes. The operative's lungs burned with each breath. The temperature was a fluctuating nightmare, shifting between near-freezing and scorching heat as atmospheric currents swirled unpredictably. In the distance, a storm of what appeared to be metallic projectiles raged, the pieces colliding to create a cacophony of screaming impacts. How could anything live here, let alone train for combat? Z-Vex activated optical enhancements, scanning the horizon. There, a group of human shapes moving with purpose. The operative began the excruciating journey toward them, each step an agony. After what felt like eternity, Z-Vex reached a vantage point behind a ridge of obsidian-like rock. Below stretched a training field where dozens of humans were engaged in combat exercises. Their instructors paced among them, shouting,
"You call that a fighting stance, Jenkins? My dead grandmother could knock you over, and she was cremated last year!"
A line of humans was performing some kind of strength exercise, lifting what appeared to be metal bars weighted with massive discs. The gravity here would make each disc weigh several hundred kilograms.
"Only 80 put-ups, Smith! The wind's barely Category 3 today! My 5-year-old daughter does 100 before breakfast!"
Z-Vex watched in growing horror as a female human completed her set, her arms visibly trembling. Rather than collapsing, she dropped to the ground and began performing push-ups without being ordered to. Her face showed pain, but also something else. Determination? Pride? To the left, a new horror unfolded. A squad of humans was engaging in what appeared to be close-quarters combat training, but with live weapons. Not training simulators or safety-equipped replicas, but actual metal blades that gleamed wickedly in the sulphurous light. Blood sprayed as a recruit took a slash across his chest, the wound immediately cauterized by the superheated air.
"Points for the hit, Kowalski!"
shouted an instructor, making notes on a datapad.
"Anderson, that's the 3rd time you've left your right side exposed. 2-kilometer run in full gear, then back to the circle."
The wounded human, Anderson, saluted casually, pressed a medical patch to his chest that must have contained some ungodly cocktail of stimulants and coagulants, and jogged off toward a path that led straight up the side of an active volcano.
"And make it quick!"
the instructor called after him.
"The lava flow crosses the track in 20 minutes!"
Z-Vex's attention was suddenly drawn to a spectacle so absurd it defied comprehension. Near the volcanic slope, a group of humans were engaged in what could only be described as lava surfing. They stood on metallic shields, using gravitational manipulation devices to ride down the molten rock flow, performing acrobatic stunts and tricks. One human executed a perfect backflip from one lava stream to another, whooping with excitement as her boots briefly caught fire.
That's how it's done, rookies!
She shouted, extinguishing her burning footwear by stomping in a puddle of what appeared to be liquid nitrogen.
10 points for style, -2 for the boot fire. Remember, equipment damage comes out of your pay.
Nearby, a human male was receiving medical attention. His left arm ended abruptly mid-forearm, a medical field generator creating a containment bubble around the wound. Blood, actual red hemoglobin, seeped into a collection device.
"Damn rock slide,"
the injured human was saying, grinning despite the obvious pain.
"At least I get the rest of the week off."
The medic snorted.
"Like hell you do. Captain wants you running one-arm drills starting tomorrow. Says it's good practice for battlefield injuries. Bastard,
said the injured man with what appeared to be genuine affection.
Fine, but I'm not carrying Ortiz during the night match. That dude stress eats before exercises and weighs a ton.
They both laughed about a traumatic injury and continued training.
Hey, Doc,
the injured man called out as the medic started to leave.
Since you're taking the arm anyway, mind if I get the bone cleaned and turned into a combat knife handle? Been wanting to try that old Delta Force tradition.
Sure thing, the medic replied casually. I'll run it through the autoclave and have it sent to requisitions. Want me to save any tendons too? They make great bowstrings.
Nah, just the ulna. Thanks, though.
A deafening boom shook the ground beneath Zivex's hiding spot. Across the training field, what could only be described as a controlled nuclear detonation had just occurred. A mushroom cloud rose ominously, and a shock wave of superheated air rushed outward, flattening everything in its path. Instead of taking cover, a group of humans rushed toward the blast zone. They wore minimal radiation protection, just masks and light suits that couldn't possibly provide adequate shielding.
Rescue Team Alpha, you have 4 minutes to locate and extract survivors before secondary radiation reaches critical levels,
barked a commander through a comm system.
Team Beta, set up triage. I want contamination protocols followed to the letter this time. Jenkins still glows in the dark from last month's exercise.
As if this weren't madness enough, Zivex observed a human leaping directly into the radioactive dust cloud, carrying nothing but a handheld sensor and what appeared to be a standard medical kit.
Lieutenant Vasquez, what the hell are you doing? Screamed the commander.
The figure emerged moments later, dragging 2 training dummies.
Thermal imaging showed survivors, sir! Couldn't wait for the team to suit up!
The lieutenant's skin was already showing radiation burns, bright red blisters forming on exposed areas.
That's the 3rd time this month you've exceeded safe radiation exposure, Vasquez!
The commander scolded, though Zivex detected a note of pride in his voice.
Report to medical for scrubbing and cell regeneration, and add another radiation tattoo to your collection.
Yes, sir,
Vasquez replied, saluting with a burned hand.
Going for a full sleeve by graduation.
Zivex couldn't process what it was seeing. These humans were willingly exposing themselves to radiation levels that would instantly kill most sentient species, treating it as just another training obstacle. In another area, a group of recruits was chest-deep in what appeared to be a bubbling pit of acidic mud. The substance hissed and steamed where it contacted their environmental suits, which were clearly being eaten away. The humans didn't seem concerned. They were engaged in some kind of tug-of-war exercise, teams on opposite sides of the pit struggling to pull each other in fully.
If your suit breach alarm sounds, you have 30 seconds to get clear and apply neutralizer,
shouted an instructor, casually sitting on the edge of the pit, drinking from a container.
Anyone who loses a limb is automatically on latrine duty for a week.
A cheer went up as one team successfully dragged their opponents completely into the acid pit. The losers emerged, suits smoking and partially dissolved, slapping each other on the back and making jokes about taking a bath. One recruit climbed out with a hole burned through his suit at the shoulder. Skin beneath was red and blistered, clearly a severe chemical burn. Instead of seeking medical attention, he grabbed a spray canister from his belt, applied some kind of foam to the wound, and rejoined the group for the next exercise. As if this weren't enough, the winning team's captain performed what appeared to be a victory celebration by diving headfirst into the acid pit, executing a perfect swan dive before disappearing beneath the caustic surface. She emerged seconds later, her helmet partially dissolved but intact enough to maintain a breathable atmosphere, and climbed out to thunderous applause.
That's why Santiago is team leader,
the instructor announced proudly.
Anyone else want to demonstrate that level of acid immunity? No? Then drink your supplements and stop complaining about the taste.
Beyond the acid pit, Zivex witnessed what at first appeared to be an execution. A line of recruits stood at the edge of a massive chasm, hands bound behind their backs, while instructors fitted them with what looked like extremely rudimentary parachute systems.
Halo drop simulation,
Bellowed an instructor.
except today we're doing it Laho style. Low altitude, high opening. You've got about 3 seconds of free fall before you need to deploy. Anyone who pancakes has to climb back up the cliff on their own.
But sir, protested one recruit, the winds in the chasm are unpredictable, and these are the faulty chutes from last month's inventory.
Exactly.
The instructor grinned maniacally.
Welcome to real-world conditions, sunshine. Sometimes your equipment is shit, the intel is wrong, and Mother Nature wants you dead. Figure it out or become a crater.
To Zivex's horror, the instructors began pushing recruits into the chasm one by one. The humans fell, screaming, though Zivex's translation software detected that many were screaming obscenities and jokes rather than expressions of terror. Chutes deployed, immediately caught violent updrafts, and sent the recruits spiraling around the rocky walls of the chasm. One recruit's chute failed to open properly. The human, displaying impossible quick thinking, used a small knife concealed in their boot to cut away the falling main chute, then pulled a tiny emergency chute from their helmet. It barely slowed their descent, but they managed to angle their body toward a protruding rock outcropping, impacting with bone-crushing force, but somehow maintaining their grip. They hung there, clearly injured, but already beginning to climb up the sheer cliff face, using what appeared to be micro-explosives to create handholds in the rock.
That's Nguyen showing you how it's done,
The instructor shouted to the remaining recruits.
No functional chute, spinal compression fracture, and probable internal bleeding, but still completing the mission. That's the spirit we're looking for.
Zivex's attention was drawn to a commotion near the center of the field. A large human with authority markings on his armor was standing before a group of younger recruits. What made this scene particularly disturbing was that the instructor had removed his upper protective gear, standing bare-chested in the toxic atmosphere. Even more shocking, the sky above him had begun to glow an ominous purple. The storm that had been distant was now overhead, and it wasn't just metallic projectiles. It was plasma, superheated ionized gas condensing into liquid-like droplets that fell like rain.
Listen up, maggots,
The instructor bellowed.
That's a Class 2 plasma storm rolling in. Perfect weather for your 5-mile uphill tactical advance.
Groans arose from the recruits, but they were already checking equipment and forming into units. "Sir," one recruit asked, "will we get environmental shields this time?" The instructor's grin was terrifying.
What do you think this is? Daycare? The enemy isn't going to wait while you adjust your comfort settings. The plasma will teach you to move quickly and make good decisions, or it'll cook you where you stand. Either way, valuable lesson.
To demonstrate his point, he held out his bare arm. A plasma droplet fell onto his skin, sizzling on contact. The smell of burning flesh reached Zivex's position. The instructor didn't flinch. He simply examined the quarter-sized burn with mild interest.
See? 3rd-degree burn. Exciting, isn't it? Now imagine that hitting your face!
He slapped a medical patch over the wound without breaking eye contact with the recruits.
Anyone who returns with fewer than 3 plasma burns fails the exercise. Anyone who returns with more than 15 also fails, because that's just sloppy movement.
Then, to Zivex's disbelief, the instructor reached up and caught a plasma droplet in his bare hand, holding the sizzling superheated material like a bizarre trophy.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a plasma grenade.
He hurled the droplet at a nearby target dummy, which immediately burst into flames.
Learn to weaponize everything around you, even the things trying to kill you.
A recruit stepped forward and, mimicking the instructor, caught a plasma droplet in her arm. The sizzling of burning flesh was audible even from Zivex's position, but the human didn't cry out. Instead, she lobbed the droplet at another target, managing a direct hit.
Now that's initiative, Moore!
The instructor roared approvingly.
Medical will fix that hand later. Probably. Either way, You'll have a cool new scar to show off at the graduation party.
As the recruits prepared to move out, Javex noticed something even more disturbing. A separate training area, partially obscured by a ridge where humans appeared to be fighting something else. Not other humans, not training drones. The creature moved with unnatural speed, had too many limbs, razor-sharp appendages, and snapping mandibles.
Xeno-soldier combat training,
explained a voice directly behind Javex. The operative nearly died of shock, whirling to find a human female standing there, arms casually crossed. Her face bore a network of scars that formed a strangely deliberate pattern, and one eye had been replaced with a cybernetic implant that glowed faintly red.
"Those are vat-grown Krevax hunters,"
she continued conversationally, as if she weren't addressing a foreign spy infiltrating a secure military installation.
"Nasty bastards from Tau Ceti. We keep a breeding population for live fire exercises."
Javex's cover was blown. Somehow, this human had detected a Dominion shapeshifter, technology that had fooled security systems throughout the galaxy. I don't, Javex stammered, still maintaining human form but preparing emergency countermeasures. The woman waved dismissively.
"Save it. We detected your shuttle entering atmosphere. Impressive tech, by the way. Almost invisible to our standard arrays. Almost."
She pointed to her cybernetic eye.
"This little beauty sees radiation signature your cloaking doesn't mask. We knew you were here before you landed." "Then why?" "Why let you watch?"
She shrugged.
"Orders. Command wanted to see how long you'd last in our atmosphere without proper adaptation. You've done better than expected. Most species collapse within 5 minutes. You're going on 12.
Javex watched, transfixed with horror, as the recruits began their tactical advance. A full sprint up an incline of at least 30 degrees into the teeth of a storm that was literally raining fire. They moved with coordination, covering each other when plasma droplets fell too close, helping comrades who stumbled. Behind them, the instructor bellowed,
Move like you want to live! Miller, what the hell was that? Did you just dodge a plasma drop? That's an automatic fail! Stand still and take at least one hit like a proper soldier!
A young human actually stopped running, squared his shoulders, and stood still as a droplet of plasma landed directly on his helmet, partially melting the reinforced material. Only then did he resume running, trailing smoke.
"Sweet void,"
Javex whispered, forgetting the human observer.
"Impressive, right?"
she said with evident pride.
"This isn't even their final assessment. Wait until you see what we do for graduation."
As if on cue, an earth-shattering roar split the toxic air. Javex looked toward the source to see something that defied comprehension. A massive reptilian creature, easily 30 meters tall, was climbing over a distant ridge. Its hide was covered in armored plates that glowed red-hot, and multiple heads snaked from its body, each breathing a different elemental attack. Fire, acid, some kind of electrical discharge.
"Is that?" "Bioengineered Hydra Rex," the woman explained cheerfully. "For the advanced class, what we call a walking environmental hazard. Extreme heat, acid blood, lightning discharges, regenerative capabilities, and a particularly vindictive disposition. We drop senior recruits with just basic equipment about 10 clicks away and tell them to bring back one of its hearts." "One of its hearts?" "It has 5, she explained as if discussing the weather. "Each one powers a different defense system. Clever adaptation from the designers." "And this is normal training?" "Oh, this? This is just Tuesday," she laughed. "Though today's a bit special. See that team by the southern ridge? They're trying something new."
Javex focused optical sensors on the indicated area. A small group of humans was setting up what appeared to be a primitive catapult.
"They're not," Javex began. "Oh, but they are," the woman grinned. "Watch."
To Javex's absolute disbelief, a human climbed into the catapult's launch basket. The team made final adjustments, then triggered the release mechanism. The human was hurled through the air in a graceful arc, directly toward the massive creature's central head.
Are they insane?
Zivex gasped.
Creative problem solvers,
The woman corrected.
Team Bravo realized that climbing the beast takes too long and exposes them to more danger. Their solution? Direct aerial insertion.
The launched human, somehow still conscious and functioning, reached the apex of their trajectory and deployed not a parachute, but what appeared to be maneuvering thrusters attached to their armor. With impossible precision, they adjusted their descent to land directly on the creature's central head, immediately plunging some kind of specialized blade deep into its skull. The beast roared and thrashed, but the human held on, progressively working their way down toward its chest cavity.
Hernandez is going for a speedrun record,
the human noted with professional admiration.
Current record for Hydra heart extraction is 4 minutes 23 seconds from initial engagement. She's on pace to break it by at least 30 seconds.
In the distance, something even larger and more terrifying moved along the volcanic ridge, a creature that made the Hydra Rex look like a pet. It walked on 6 legs, each as thick as ancient trees, with a body that appeared to be partially molten, magma seeping from between armored plates. Its head was a nightmare of horns and teeth, and what appeared to be actual stars burned in its eye sockets.
Don't tell me that's also a trading opponent,
Zivex said weakly.
The planet Vor? No, absolutely not, the woman replied,
and Zivex felt momentary relief until she continued.
That's for the graduation ceremony. Recruits don't fight it directly. Thank the void for small mercies. They have to recover an artifact from its stomach,
she added with a wicked grin,
while it's still alive and actively trying to digest them.
In another section of the training ground, Zivex observed what could only be described as voluntary torture. Humans were taking turns sitting in a chamber that appeared to be cycling rapidly through extreme environmental conditions, from apparent vacuum to crushing pressure, from freezing cold to incinerating heat, all within seconds.
Rapid environmental adaptation training,
explained Zivex's guide, following the operative's gaze.
Teaches the nervous system to process and adapt to sudden environmental shifts without shutting down from shock. That's not physically possible,
Zivex protested.
No biological system could withstand those extremities without failing. Conventional biological systems, no,
the woman agreed.
But we found that with the right conditioning and some minor genetic tweaks, humans can develop remarkable adaptation capabilities. The washout rate is high, of course. About 60% of recruits don't make it through REIT. They die? Some do, she acknowledged casually. The rest just suffer permanent nervous system damage and get reassigned to less demanding divisions. But those who pass, they can function in environments that would kill most sentient species within seconds.
As if to emphasize her point, a recruit emerged from the chamber, skin simultaneously frostbitten and burned, blood seeping from ears and nose, and immediately saluted the supervising officer.
Cycle complete, sir! Requesting permission for second run with increased intensity!
Granted, Torres. Try not to have a stroke this time. Paperwork's a bitch. The recruit laughed and returned to the chamber for another session of what should be lethal environmental exposure. A sudden explosion rocked a distant section of the training ground. Zivex saw a massive fireball rise into the air, followed by chunks of debris raining down across the facility. Alarms should have been sounding. Emergency protocols should have activated. Instead, Zivex heard applause.
What was that?
The operative demanded.
Oh, that's the demolitions class, the woman explained. Looks like Singh finally got the yield calculation right on the antimatter pocket charge. Last week he only managed to vaporize half the target bunker. His instructors were very disappointed. Antimatter charges? For training? Of course. How else would they learn proper handling procedure for unstable exotic materials?
She shrugged as if this were the most reasonable thing in the world.
Though I think they're using a bit too much. We're on our 3rd training facility this year. The paperwork for requisitioning new planets is getting ridiculous. New planets?
Zvex's translation software must be malfunctioning.
Well, we can't keep training on the same world once the ecology is completely collapsed, can we? That would be irresponsible environmental management.
The woman looked genuinely concerned about this point. In yet another area of the facility, Zvex observed humans engaged in what appeared to be hand-to-hand combat while completely immersed in liquid nitrogen. Their movements were slower due to the extreme cold, but they continued fighting even as ice crystals formed on their skin and equipment.
0K combat training, the woman noted, for operations on methane moons and similar environments. The trick is maintaining circulation so your limbs don't shatter when you strike an opponent.
As Zvex watched, one combatant delivered a punch that caused their opponent's arm to crack, not break, but actually crack like brittle ice. Instead of stopping, the injured human simply broke off the damaged section of their own forearm, jagged bone protruding, and used it as an improvised weapon to stab their opponent in the shoulder.
Adaptive weaponization,
called out their instructor approvingly.
Moore gets extra points for resource utilization. Someone make sure Medical preserves that bone fragment for his trophy wall.
In the distance, the massive Hydra Rex suddenly emitted a death cry that shook the very ground. Zvex saw a tiny human figure emerge from its chest cavity, triumphantly holding a pulsing organ the size of a small vehicle above their head.
3 minutes 42 seconds,
announced the woman, checking a device on her wrist.
New facility record. We'll have to add Hernandez to the Wall of Fame.
She pointed to a nearby cliff face, where Zvex now realized with growing horror hundreds of names had been carved into the stone, along with elapsed times and kill counts. Zvex had seen enough. More than enough. The operative stumbled backward, every moment a battle against gravity and pain.
Leaving so soon?
The human asked, sounding genuinely disappointed.
You're missing the night exercises. That's when we release the parasite swarms and cut all illumination. Then we flood the valley with hallucinogenic gas and tell the recruits to distinguish between real and imagined threats. It gets quite creative.
These creatures!
Zvex gasped, feeling organs beginning to fail under the sustained assault of this hellscape.
Are not normal. They are not sane. And they are not stoppable. They don't train to win wars. They train to endure nightmares.
The human woman looked oddly touched.
That's perhaps the nicest thing anyone's ever said about us.
She stuck out her hand in what Zvex vaguely recognized as a human greeting gesture.
Captain Sarah Jones, by the way, Camp Commandant.
You command this horror?
With pride,
she beamed.
Graduated top of my class 15 years ago. Set the record for most simultaneous plasma burns while still completing the tactical advance. 27. Nobody's broken it yet.
She gestured to her scarred face.
The pattern's quite distinctive, isn't it? Had to turn down regenerative treatment. Tradition for record holders.
As if to emphasize this madness, a deafening boom filled the air as a human wearing what appeared to be an experimental jetpack shot past overhead, trailing fire and smoke, laughing maniacally while being pursued by what could only be described as mechanized predator drones.
Aerial evasion training, Captain Jones explained. The jetpacks have a 40% catastrophic failure rate, and the drones are programmed to actually kill the targets. Really motivates proper evasive maneuvering.
The jetpack suddenly exploded, sending the human tumbling through the air. Instead of panic, Zvex heard whoops of excitement as the trainee deployed some kind of wingsuit, continuing the evasion exercise while literally on fire and in freefall.
Improvisation under catastrophic equipment failure,
Jones called up approvingly.
Good work, Petrov. Try to extinguish yourself before landing this time.
Zvex managed to activate the emergency extraction beacon on the quantum communicator one final time.
Tell your people what you saw here today, Captain Jones said, her expression suddenly serious. Tell them we're not your enemy, unless you make us one.
A plasma droplet sizzled as it landed on her shoulder. She didn't even blink.
And if you decide to come back, she added with a grin, do it properly. Sign up as a diplomatic observer. We run a special 2-week diplomatic corps toughening program. Mild mortality rate, but those who survive develop a much deeper appreciation for human psychological makeup.
Behind her, a recruit was wrestling with what appeared to be an actual interdimensional horror, a writhing mass of tentacles and eyes that should not exist in normal space-time.
Is that?
Zivex couldn't even finish the question.
Pocket dimension breach training, Jones explained casually. Got to be prepared for anything in this universe, and a few others.
The message sent, Zivex collapsed, barely managing to crawl back to the shuttle before losing consciousness. Captain Jones's parting words still ringing in the operative's ears.
Remember, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and what does kill you makes a useful cautionary tale for the next batch of recruits. Come back anytime. We're starting our volcano surfing competition next week. It's BYOS, though. Bring your own shield. The standard issue ones melt too quickly in the magma flows.
This session of the War Council will come to order,
announced Grand Marshal Photex, his voice lacking its usual resonance. The chamber, designed to accommodate hundreds, was nearly empty. Many representatives had returned to their homeworlds, carrying urgent warnings. Those who remained looked haunted.
The operative's final transmission has been verified,
said Colonel Takis.
Medical analysis confirms Zivex suffered 17 distinct organ failures during the brief exposure to the human training environment. Rehabilitation will take months.
And the humans?
Asked Admiral Vexala quietly.
Complete the full training cycle on that world. 26 standard weeks. Those who survive graduate to more intensive environments.
Silence fell, heavy as a neutron star.
We cannot fight them,
stated General Zilthrak finally.
It is not merely a matter of military capability. It is a fundamental incompatibility of existence. We train in gardens. They train in hell.
Perhaps,
ventured Chancellor Yolon,
we have been approaching this incorrectly. We assumed humans were developing their military capability to expand their territory at our expense. But what if...
What if they are preparing for something else entirely?
Finished Admiral Krov.
Something worse than themselves.
The thought settled over the assembly like a shroud.
Consider their history,
Colonel Takis said, bringing up historical data.
Humans nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, climate collapse. Each time, they survived and rebuilt, creating new systems to prevent the same catastrophe.
You're suggesting they're preparing for extinction-level threat,
said Admiral Vexala.
I'm suggesting they are an extinction-level threat to anything that threatens them,
corrected Takis.
Their training methods aren't rational by our standards because they're not operating for the kinds of wars we fight. They're preparing for total warfare, existential combat.
General Zilthrak's tentacles coiled tightly.
What do you think their veterans are like? The ones who've completed these training programs and seen actual combat?
No one had an answer, but the implication was clear. If these were recruits, what nightmarish capabilities did experienced human soldiers possess?
I propose,
said Yolon carefully,
that we consider a radical alternative to our current strategy. Instead of containing humanity, we align with them.
Alliance!
sputtered a Vermilion commander.
With these Death Worlders?
Look at the evidence,
Yolon insisted.
They're expanding cautiously, not aggressively. They've responded diplomatically to all official contact. They only militarize when threatened. What if, just consider the possibility, what if humanity has already fought horrors beyond our understanding? What if that's why they train as they do?
The council chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. Some insisted on immediate military containment of human territories. Others argued for full retreat, abandoning any systems humans might want. A growing faction supported Yolon's alliance proposal. Grand Marshal Photex raised a limb, silencing the chamber.
"We have one advantage," he said gravely. "Humans don't yet know we've been observing them. We still have time to approach them from a position of apparent strength."
You propose deception?
Asked Admiral Vexala.
"I propose survival,"
Corrected Photex.
"We will send a diplomatic mission to Earth. We will present ourselves as interested in peaceful cooperation. And we will pray to whatever gods might listen that humanity never discovers why we suddenly became so interested in friendship."
The diplomatic fleet arrived at Earth with as much pomp and circumstance as the 12 species could muster. Flagship vessels, ceremonial escorts, displays of technological sophistication carefully balanced to impress without threatening. Earth responded by sending a single, modestly armed vessel as an escort. The aliens weren't sure if this was reassuring or terrifying. The reception hall in the United Earth Embassy was designed to accommodate foreign biologies, atmospheric composition adjustable by section, gravity plating with individual controls, temperature gradients to suit various preferences. The alien diplomats found it suspiciously accommodating. Ambassador Garcia entered precisely on time, flanked by 2 aides in simple uniforms. No visible weapons, no battle armor, just well-tailored diplomatic attire. She was smiling, that strange facial expression humans use to indicate anything from pleasure to murderous intent.
Welcome to Earth,
She said, taking a seat at the massive conference table.
I must say, we are surprised by this sudden interest in diplomatic relations, particularly from species that, until recently, seemed content to pretend we didn't exist.
The alien representatives exchanged glances. Their carefully crafted story about recent astrographic surveys and exciting opportunities for cultural exchange suddenly seemed transparently thin. Grand Marshal Photex began the prepared statement anyway.
"Honorable representative of humanity, the Galactic Concord brings greetings and—"
Let's skip the formalities,
interrupted Garcia, still smiling. She lifted a steaming cup to her lips and sipped.
This is coffee, by the way. Fascinating beverage. The main compound, caffeine, is a potent neurotoxin that would probably kill most of you at this table.
She took another sip, maintaining eye contact with Photex.
We developed a taste for it because it helps us stay alert during long periods without sleep. Now we drink it for pleasure.
The translator rendered her words perfectly, but several diplomats signaled for clarification, certain they had misunderstood.
Ambassador,
Ventured Admiral Vexala.
we come seeking peaceful relations between our peoples. We acknowledge your species' remarkable adaptability and wish to establish protocols that will ensure mutual prosperity.
"And avoid conflict,"
Added General Zilthrak quickly.
Ah,
Said Garcia, her smile widening.
you've been watching us.
The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees.
Our deep space sensors detected your reconnaissance probes some time ago.
Garcia explained conversationally.
Interesting technology. Very stealthy. We've incorporated several features into our own designs already. Imitation, sincerest form of flattery, you know.
Colonel Takis felt his plumage flatten against his body involuntarily. The humans had not only detected their supposedly undetectable probes, but had reverse-engineered the technology, while apparently taking no offense at the espionage.
Since we're being direct,
Said Garcia, setting down her cup.
let me guess. You observed our military training facilities. You found them concerning.
We observed your personnel conducting exercises in environments that we consider uninhabitable.
Acknowledged Grand Marshal Photex carefully.
It has led us to revise certain assumptions about human capabilities.
And now you're here to ensure we're not planning to use those capabilities against you,
finished Garcia. She laughed, a sound that made several diplomats flinch.
Oh, you thought we trained on those worlds to fight you?
A heavy silence fell over the room. Garcia leaned forward slightly, still smiling, but her eyes had gone hard as diamonds.
No, no, no. We trained there to prepare for what's coming next.
What is coming next?
Asked Chancellor Yolon, fur bristling with fear. The ambassador sat back, expression softening slightly.
That's the question, isn't it? Humanity has nearly destroyed itself multiple times. We've learned to prepare for worst-case scenarios. All worst-case scenarios, simultaneously.
She gestured to a wall, which transformed into a display showing a timeline of human conflicts and disasters.
We train in high gravity because we might need to fight on high-gravity worlds. We train in toxic atmospheres because we might face chemical warfare. We train in storms of fire because, well, you never know.
You prepare for everything,
said Admiral Vexala slowly.
Because anything could happen.
Precisely,
Garcia nodded approvingly.
The universe is vast and mostly unknown. Threats could come from anywhere. New pathogens, resource scarcity, cosmic events, other intelligences with incompatible goals.
She spread her hands.
So yes, we train in hell, not because we like it, but because we'd rather be over-prepared than extinct. We'd rather have soldiers who can fight in any environment than discover too late that we needed that capability.
And now?
Asked Grand Marshal Photix.
What are your intentions toward the Galactic Concord?
Garcia's smile returned, warmer this time.
Now, I think we have much to learn from each other. You have technologies we find interesting. We have resilience you might benefit from. The universe is dangerous enough without adding unnecessary conflicts.
She lifted her cup in a toast.
To cooperation, then. To facing the unknown together, rather than fearing each other.
The alien diplomats cautiously raised their various drinking vessels, relief evident in their postures. As the formal negotiations began, Admiral Vexala found herself seated beside one of Garcia's aides.
Is it true,
she asked quietly,
that humans actually enjoy these training environments? The footage we saw showed soldiers laughing.
The aide, a veteran named Kapoor with scars visible along her jawline, smiled ruefully.
Enjoy? No, not at all. They are nightmarish hellholes that push us beyond all reasonable limits.
Then why?
The laughter,
Kapoor shrugged.
That's just how humans cope with horror. We joke about the things that terrify us. We make light of pain. It's either laugh or scream, and screaming doesn't help you finish the mission.
She glanced at the Admiral's crystalline form.
Besides, we've found something interesting over the centuries. The kinds of people who can laugh while marching through acid rain, they're the ones you want beside you when things go completely to hell.
And your training ensures you have such people,
concluded Vexala.
Exactly, said Kapoor. We don't train in hell because we like it. We train in hell because the universe doesn't care what environments we find comfortable. And when the real nightmare begins, wherever and whatever it might be, humanity intends to be ready.
She smiled, and despite the warmth in her expression, Admiral Vexala couldn't help noticing how much it resembled the grin of a predator.
After all,
Kapoor added quietly,
it's not the strongest species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the one most adaptable to change.
Across the chamber, Ambassador Garcia was explaining human emergency response protocols to an increasingly pale Grand Marshal Photix.
And that's just our civilian disaster management teams,
she was saying cheerfully.
Wait until I tell you about our actual military doctrines.
The Grand Marshal looked like he might faint. Garcia laughed, that unsettling human sound again, and patted his arm reassuringly.
Don't worry. As long as we're allies, you'll never need to see them in action.
The unspoken corollary hung in the air. And you should do everything in your power to ensure we remain allies. The galactic representatives nodded in unanimous agreement. They had come seeking to neutralize a potential threat. They would leave with an alliance with the most terrifying species they had ever encountered. And somehow, that felt like the better option.